3, 2, 1. A scar from the Scargiver herself. That was a line in a movie, believe it or not. I'm Adam from Your Movie Sucks. This is Sardonicast.
Hold it, homeboy. I don't need to hear that word. Okay, I need to fix your one a little minute, because what's a Scargiver again?
It's a person who gave him a scar.
That makes my itchy, and we are spoiled for choice right now. So many good movies, so many good shows.
Oh no!
And Rebel Moon.
I only watched it because I know you wanted to talk about it, right?
Well, yeah. I felt like I watched part 1 twice. I can't. Well, actually, that kind of would have been funny to have just seen part 1 twice and never actually finish the saga, the blossoming new tale from Snyder.
Yeah. Which apparently this isn't even the last one anymore, because like it was supposed to be originally. Maybe that was my impression. I thought it was going to be a two-parter.
He's like he's stuck in the Netflix web now, where like I guess everything he makes on Netflix, they want to be like a huge franchise. This, what's he called, Army of the Dead like universe, and oh, by the way, that's in the Rebel Moon universe, don't you know? And now that's going to be a trilogy. It's like, oh my god, stop.
Yeah.
Who is enjoying this? Who is asking for this? Because it sure as hell ain't me.
Well, apparently it is you. Why'd you watch the first one twice?
Yeah. Okay, I watched it when it came out. Then weeks and weeks went by, and then we were going to talk about it on the podcast. And I was like, oh, I can't remember a single thing.
Oh, yeah.
Not one thing. Because I didn't take notes like an idiot on that first time.
Well, I forgot that you told me that on that episode of the podcast, so I guess we're in the same boat.
Well, that's the thing about Zack Snyder's movies nowadays is they do kind of act like these memory suppressants. I don't know about you, but like I think everyone who finishes Rebel Moon, even part 1, but let alone part 2, deserves like some kind of medal, some award. It's like, it's a challenge to get through this film. Like, and we thought that first one was that what do they even call it? Is it a part 1? Is it a part 2? I guess
it said part
Rebel
1.
Moon part 1.
Yeah.
Yeah, even in part 1 we were saying about how like it's all over the place, it's jumping about, it's uninteresting, it's boring. How he found a way to somehow make it worse. Like part 2 is somehow worse than part 1. Part 1 was already shocking.
Yeah, they're worse in different ways. I found part 2 to be funnier in some ways.
I had some good laughs, some good unintentional laughs. Yeah,
like how Cade the Tortured Crossing can be funnier in some ways than Twisted Pair. Right? There's something
kind of like it was reminding me of like film production on that level at points, like completely non-ironically, like not trying to exaggerate. Like that scene early on where they're all like standing in a line in that barn, and it's like awkwardly blocked, and there's like this continued grease smear over the lens, so you can't really see anything. It's like, this is shoddy, you know? Like, I'm pretty sure they were like $80-90 million a piece. But it's like this does not look good, and I feel bad, and I feel like I have to take back what I used to always jerk off about Snyder. It was like, well, he's got an eye for visuals. He's got,
allegedly,
you know, he's really got that side of it down pat. But you know what? A few weeks ago, I revisited Watchmen, or at least tried to, because you know, I read the graphic novel back in the day. I think it's a really good story. I was trying to show it to somebody. We started watching the film. Half an hour goes by, and I'm like, you know what? This is almost unwatchable to me, because like now,
unwatchable
in the space of yeah, because like all of those ticks, all of those Snyderisms that like were burgeoning around that time are like, they're cemented now. And it's like, oh, you're still doing that same thing. You don't care about like scenes. You're so like wrapped up in this like referential imagery that you don't even care about like the storytelling part of it and making it resonate beyond just like these flat references. And that's what Rebel Moon Part 2 feels like. When the first one did as well, it's like, oh, there's a bit of Dark Souls, there's a bit of Star Wars, there's a bit of Kurosawa, there's blah, 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 blah. It's just endless. And this one somehow, you know, at least in part 1, there was something about that structure where it was like, yeah, it was changing environment every 10-15 minutes. It was doing something crazy.
It was a bit more stimulating.
Exactly.
Even if it was the most boring movie ever made, it was still somehow.
Yeah. But there's something more boring about checking the time code of this film an hour in. Not even any action.
Still story time.
It's like, what? You pitch this as a Star Wars movie, right? And it's like, there's no Star Wars movie where 15, 20 minutes passes and there hasn't been something breezy, some action thing. It's building up to these small little set. There's nothing. For the first hour of this film, they are sitting around talking as if it's Game of Thrones or something, as if it's on that caliber, as if these characters are fleshed out or have anything to explore.
They all took turns.
That scene.
Just telling stories exactly. that nobody cared about.
That scene where they just sit down in the bar and they just take turns like, what's your backstory, friend? And it's like, what? You had the opportunity. You had like 4+ hours of real estate to plan out the story, and this is the way you structured it? What? And then like right after you develop it, you kill half of them. So it's like, there's no excuse for this.
I think anybody that hates the Matrix Revolutions would gain some respect for it after watching this, because this kind of tries to do the whole like, oh, culmination of events and war and all these characters in the battle. But like the Matrix Revolutions at least had characters that they fleshed out in some way and some sense of pacing and some sense of stakes, right? Like, sure, it's a goofy movie for a huge chunk of it, and not all of it works. But I was definitely wishing I was watching that over this as I was watching it. You know?
I mean, you could pick, like, out of all the influences from this movie, if you just threw them all into a hat and pulled out any of them, it would be superior to this. You'd actually get something, you know? Yeah, you could put on any Star Wars movie, man, like some of these like mech designs they're pulling out look like straight out of Destiny, or I'm sure some Japanese artist I don't know, or something like this. It just feels like he looked at George Lucas and was like, I can do that. But he chose Hidden Fortress, I'm going to do Seven Samurai. Yeah. It's like as simple and surface level as that. And like completely ignoring like everything in film that has happened since the 60s. And just like, oh, it seems so tone deaf. So just like,
yeah.
Doesn't fit in anywhere.
By the time everyone's fatigued about Star Wars, he's like, this is my shot.
Now's my chance.
This is my moment.
Yeah, now's my time.
We're going to have... Do they even call them anything? The lightsabers? They're like fucking, red and blue light katanas. Oh, very cool. That's not a lightsaber. Fuck off. Yeah, and it's so shameless. Pointless too. Every single fight scene happens like in the same barn. And I'm pretty sure that it was just the same barn from the first movie. Like, holy fuck, you don't even have set pieces. There's no set pieces in this film. It's just one long scene. And then some of the movie is just like pointless flashbacks that I can't even remember.
Yeah, because it's like they have a really simple, basic setup. It's like Helm's Deep from Lord of the Rings or something. There's a place that's understaffed, that needs protecting. Let's go. Let's build up this tension. Let's have this big war scene. The odds are against them. There's some kind of baked in tension in that. But everything like obvious you'd expect from that kind of setup that would help the tension, that would build something exciting to watch, they just do the opposite of. Like, you'd expect, like, the first section of the movie, the first half an hour, to be this, like, mad scramble to get ready. But the way it's presented, they're like, well, you got 5 days to collect the grain. Let's go and kind of casually farm for a little bit. Meanwhile, the baddie Empire...
Let's do it in slow motion.
Yeah, it definitely is slow motion. But meanwhile, the bad guys are, like, calling up, like, how's the farming going? How's all that grain? And it's like, wow, this is tense. This is exciting. What? Even going back to the whole grain plot thing anyway. It's like so absurd that this empire even wants to go and get the grain anyway.
Well, it's like how in Mars Needs Moms, the Martians didn't know how to be moms. It's the empire doesn't know agriculture and grain harvesting and sifting. So it's very important.
But it's like, why do you choose grain in this sci-fi setting where they have like hovering, trucks? They've got technology that can bring you back from the brink of death.
He probably built it around the slow-mo scenes. He probably imagined like, oh, dude, fucking grain harvesting and slow-mo. Oh my God. Mwah. And then worked from there. He probably just thought of the slow-mo scenes that he wanted to film and then just worked backwards.
So if you want some sci-fi harvesting scenes, Dune just came out. And you know what? That gap between Dune Part 1 and 2, I remember there was that gap of time. I remembered way more about Dune Part 1 than the gap between Rebel Moon Part 1 and 2. And that was like a mere matter of months,
Well, I mean, like, it's not even out the other. It's not even just that it's boring. It's that it's boring and nothing they're showing is new and it's all just a derivative of something else, right? Like every single scene, I'm like, oh, it's just that. But less interesting. Oh, it's just that, but but more boring, worse pulled off.
Yeah, I'm reading Invincible right now because the show's just not going fast enough for me.
Nice.
And that book is derivative, but they
Of
figure
course.
out the angles to flesh out characters, and they find somewhere to take it. They really like indulge in the characters, and they don't let things go. And it's like, yeah, you can be derivative if you want, but why don't you make a character that we resonate with, or has some kind of arc that's interesting, or some visual flair to this that's fun, or maybe it's the action that you're a fan. There's no focus point.
But also, to be fair, Invincible is more of a satire than a ripoff, right? Invincible is more like poking fun at the other properties, so you necessarily need to
and like early on, especially, it's very satirical, and like there's like parodies of Star Trek and everything, but the longer it goes, the more kind of depth these characters have. But there's no parody angle here. There's there's really no self-awareness. His films, a lot of them lack self-awareness. They're so self-serious and humorless isn't necessarily a word, but like they really all are humorless. And just like there's no passion. There's nothing. There's no character you like attach yourself to, and like everyone's always down in the muck, and not in a way that like is, like an Aronofsky movie or something where it's like heavy and it seems intentional. It's like you're playing with these things that aren't meshing. These characters are so self-serious, but they're playing around with these like monster men and this like pulpy Star Wars setting, and it just doesn't mesh.
And everything looks fake.
Oh, it looks so bad.
Yeah, there's no moment where I can believe I'm like, oh, in the universe of Rebel Moon, there's totally other planets around. We showed them in the flashbacks. We're just here,
and that's
in the barn.
All these like exterior shots of like planets in space with these big dreadnoughts and whatnot. That's that's half the fun of these space movies. But one, it's irrelevant, and two, it looks horrendous. It looks like
terrible.
previs. It looks so unfinished. And it's like, well, yeah, I thought the visuals was the thing was supposed to come for you for in your films, but I guess not.
I think Zack Snyder being his own DP is one of the worst things that could have possibly happened to him.
And writer too, right? Because he's both now, right?
Oh yeah, did he used to just not write, and now everything's even worse?
I'm pretty sure he wasn't, yeah. Whereas this Army of the Dead business and Rebel Moon, he's credited as a writer. And the fact there are 3 screenwriters credited on this is
it's hilarious
enough on itself.
Each of them watched another movie and copied it.
And didn't even attempt to like blend these 3 different things, or
yeah, it's I guess he's just one of those examples of someone who was probably a bit better before they were so full of themselves, like as in they had other people holding them back in some way, right? Making them be a bit more realistic. Like, this is just speculation.
Yeah, the more freedom he's got, the worse of a filmmaker he's become.
The more confident he is about what he can do, the worse his movies are. Yeah. I got this. I'm the DP. Okay. Mm-hmm. You want to fix those dead pixels? Is that what DP stands for to you?
Do you want to get that grease off the lens so I can see what's happening?
It looks great. Yummy.
I don't know. I thought it was off to a real good start when immediately in the narration from Anthony Hopkins, he calls the character like Gunner. He pronounces it Gooner. Like he straight up is like, and the man Gooner.
That's pretty good.
I was like, oh, we're in for a treat today.
I didn't even notice that.
There are a few random like the British stuff was really like standing out to me because like the villains obviously are the Empire from Star Wars, which are obviously like a combination of like the British Empire combined with like Nazi imagery and this kind of stuff. So of course all the villains they're like sat around in like knitted sweatshirts, like in in the dreadnoughts, like messaging each other with their comical accents, and it's like the least threatening, goofy thing. And then when you go into like there's like a king and queen kind of subplot that's like in there with the main character who's she's on the run because she killed the princess or whatever. It's like the one thing that character has, one bit of like, I guess, tension or backstory. She's got all this grief, she's got all this misery from killing this princess. And then it turns out she didn't actually kill the princess. I guess spoilers.
Oh yeah,
that's the thread. That's the thread for movie 3, 4, 5, and 6. They got to go find the princess and the royalty. And like this, I'm pretty sure it was it the doctor from Saw? Was that the king?
Yeah, that was Carrie Elways.
Yeah, and he was saying like in the most British, comically over the top voice, like "you bastard" and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it was like, what? This is. God, it just does not work. Like jumping from, you're in this kind of, it's evoking like Western imagery. You've got like the windmill in the background. They're in the desert with the farming and whatnot and the hats and all that. Yeah, and then you cut to a flashback and it's like Renaissance, like royalty. Oh my God, but they're in spaceships. Yeah, nothing about that works or gels, and it just throws stuff at you.
Yeah, Carrie Elways
it might sound more interesting than it is from like how it's being described. Like some of these things might sound like, oh, that's kind of interesting, or like a fun. I'm sure that'd be a fun image to look at. Trust me, it's not. Really, it's not. It really isn't.
Well, I mean, it was. There were some parts that were really funny to me, like when the fucking string quartet was revealed as diegetic. It's like, oh, they're actually just playing this music. But then if you think about it, and you're watching the scene as it plays, and how the music changes and is dramatically tuned to exactly what the characters are doing. I'm like, wait, is the quartet in the room? They're doing the dramatic pause when she says that line, and then the guy dies, and it's like, and then like the single violin. They're all just like watching the scene.
That's part of what is so frustrating about it, right? It treats itself as if it has like the gravitas of like you're watching the third Lord of the Rings right now, you know, like this is what you've been waiting for. These are the characters you're waiting to see wrap up, and where's this going to go type energy that's bringing, but it doesn't match what you're actually being shown. Like all these characters, these sad strings are playing when characters are being taken out, and it's like I don't even know who you are, you know, or you just got your backstory 5 minutes ago.
I can imagine what he thought that scene would have been. I think that he filmed the string quartet, just had them pretend to play music, didn't have any idea what music would actually be in the scene until obviously in post, you know, just get the composer like, okay, score it like normal, except, you know, just make sure that there's string instruments, obviously. There's obviously points, you can see them in the background, they're playing when the music has stopped, which is funny. But I think tonally, he probably had like a very different idea of what that might have looked like. He might have thought like, I don't know, like just some sort of regular string quartet background music to a scene. And then the composer was like, no, this has to be dramatic. Or maybe he told the composer it had to be more dramatic, or I don't know. There was clearly not a cohesive, real idea of what it was going to look like by the end of it. No. And that's the way I feel about most of this movie, is he kind of just threw things together and then hoped that it would work, because he's got his routine, he's got his formula, he's got his work system. And I think he just he threw these things together being like, oh, it'll be Star Wars by the end of it. And that's it.
Yeah, I guess he just can work into that Netflix model quite well. Maybe you can deliver it on time, under budget, maybe.
They love him.
They clearly
love him as much as they love Adam Sandler right now.
Yeah.
He's the new Adam Sandler for Netflix. And they're doing this, and I think we mentioned this in the last episode, the last part of Rebel Moon episode.
Yeah.
The fact that he's doing these dumb, like, oh, we're going to have a director's cut. It's like, okay, wait. This was not a theatrical release. This was for Netflix. There was nothing to say that it had to be a PG-13 theatrical cut in the beginning, other than you deciding that you would have two cuts. So that the theatrical cut is also a director's cut, because you decided, like, there was nobody stopping you from doing anything. This is a marketing gimmick, and people are fucking falling for it. And even I was doing a watch along for the part 2. Someone left a comment like, yeah, you know, even with bad directors, I'm just going to wait until the director's cut so I can see their real vision. I don't believe either of these films are really their real vision. I believe it's somewhere in between. As in, I believe that the director's cut is more or less just an extended cut. Like there's nothing. Yeah. They weren't stopping him from making the movie he wanted. Netflix wasn't like, no, you can tone it down. They wanted two different cuts because everybody went apeshit over the fucking Snyder cut thing. And that was a streaming thing. That got a bunch of numbers on HBO on Max. And so they looked at that. They're like, oh, I guess fucking Zack Snyder has fans. We'll just watch the extended cut of whatever he makes. He's like, I'm a real artist and a real visionary. And then some people are also tricked into thinking like, oh, well, the only reason it wasn't good is because it wasn't the extended cut.
So mad.
And then do those people watch the extended cut and then realize it's also not good? Because I fucking watched Batman v Superman extended for the first time.
Oh, I've seen the extended. I was going to ask you about
crazy.
BVS. Why did you watch it? Why did you do that to yourself?
I've been doing my 2016 list, and that when I do my 2015, 2016, whenever I do my yearly lists, I just watch everything that's on the watch list. Unless I look at it and I go like, oh, okay, I'm never going to watch this ever. Because sometimes, I'm trying to also include like notable bad movies that were funny bad, right? That could easily appear there. Like I want to have some grasp of filmmaking in that year of notable titles that I get it. That I feel like I would want to watch eventually anyway. It's my excuse to watch it at that time.
And that was definitely a 2016 zeitgeist movie. It was one of the biggest movies of the year as far as like build up and hype and all.
It was fucking hilarious.
Jerk off stuff. Oh yeah.
The first 2 hours were hilarious. The last hour was boring, and I went through a crisis.
I think the film goes through a crisis in itself at that moment. Yeah.
I wound up hating Star Wars.
yes. I'll mention that later.
I was like, you're responsible for all of these things. Look at Rebel Moon right now. This is Star Wars' fault. Every single one of these movies is a Star Wars movie. Fuck all this shit.
I blame Snyder.
I hate the culture.
Yeah. I'm shocked you sat through that one. I guess you do get nice moments of humor. Like the
first 2 hours were hilarious.
Yeah.
The entire hour-long fight scene at the end was so boring.
Oh yeah. Yes, headache-inducing. Just like this movie, just like all of his movies for like the past 10 years have just been, just a string of this like headache, nauseating, like just kind of badly thought through. Yeah, just string of references to something. Oh, it's a bit of The Dark Knight Returns. Oh, there's a bit of Star Wars in here. Oh, there's a bit of Evil Dead or whatever you're trying to... Oh, it's just really not what I like about movies.
Zack Snyder is better at attacking your senses than Gaspar Noé. Like, he's real talented.
He's like an unintentional French auteur.
Yeah. He's definitely...
But only unintentionally, though.
Yeah. He's he set out to make the first headache type film, and then he made many more. People loved it.
My question is like, is actually work that when part 1 came out, there was a bit more of like a zeitgeist discussion. You got like big YouTube channels like, new Star Wars is here, guys. This kind of stuff. I've seen nothing for part 2. Just kind of more of a whimper type.
I saw Charlie reviewed it. I didn't watch his review because I hadn't seen the movie when the video came out, but his title was like, he just keeps getting worse. I think referencing Zack Snyder.
Yeah. Well, the reviews are lower, the user scores are lower, less people rating it so far, but I mean, I think it's worse somehow. It's just the unintentional humor, right? Going back to that, there's so much awful, like, diabolical acting in the movie. That's where a lot of the humor was coming from for me. A particular standout moment of humor for me was that general character in his flashback scene where they're like showing his men getting like bombarded from orbit, and there's just something about the way they like strung it together and blocked it, where like he's like on his knees like at gunpoint, and all of his men are kind of like in the distance. And you just see this like orbital strike, like just obliterate them, and this huge like nuke goes off. And it's just like, there's something about the timing of it, about like the reactions of everything and the melodrama of it. It's like, this is hilarious. And that in my notes as well, during that whole sequence where it's going through the backstories one by one, I wrote down like, make that 2 backstories in a row. Mm-hmm. And then like a few minutes later, make that 4. And then the note after that is, make that 5. I think it got up to 5. 5 backstories in a row. Some of which we already knew.
Oh, yeah. It's like when you're watching an anime, and then like 25 episodes in, they're like, we just got to do some flashback episodes. They're like,
the catch-up
everybody
episode.
sit down. We're gonna go one by one. Every single character here. We're gonna be like, and this is what I was doing the whole time. Remember I did this?
Yeah.
And then you're just like, okay, wait. You have to look up on Wikipedia, like, when do the flashback episodes stop? I've seen this. It's boring. It doesn't add to anything. Zack Snyder fit that into part 2 of his film, which, correct me if I'm wrong, but when part 1 came out, they were acting as if it was going to only be 2 parts, right?
That was the impression.
That's what I thought.
I guess they were impressed by it must got good streaming numbers or something.
I mean, yeah.
That first part.
Well, because, I mean, it's got Zack Snyder fans, and then it's got people who think it's probably Star Wars and don't even know that it's not. Right? Even the title, I thought it was Star Wars.
Yeah. I feel there is that subsect of people that, like, they see the mech tanks in the trailers being dropped down from space. There's a bit of action. That's, like, enough. Like, just put that on after a day of work, and you don't really want to think. You just want to see something explode or remind you of Star Wars.
And that's what a lot of Netflix is good for, I guess. But if I want to put on mindless entertainment, I'll watch the fucking Squid Game reality show. Give me something that's a little bit funnier, a little bit more stimulating. Not fucking Rebel Moon.
Well, as we said at the beginning, like we're not really spoiled for choice right now, you know, as far as like shows and movies and stuff like that. Yeah. Bad time to release this in more ways than one. There's so many characters in these movies. This whole suite, this whole fellowship that they like try to act as if they're all different. And they all feel like the exact same character. They all have like the same kind of motivations, the same way they carry themselves. They all speak like, "Oh, I'm sick of. I just want to be more than a weapon. Since that day, I've been a creature of revenge." And this kind of like really melodramatic, over-the-top way of speaking all the time, but it's all the same, like, emotional note, all the same types of beat, and it's just like, so repetitive. But by the time you get to backstory 4 or 5, and it's like the same thing, I realized that everything sucks, and I'm a weapon, and I don't want to be this way, but look at what I've been forced, and all this kind of like, oh my god, it's so uninteresting, unimaginative, over the top, and just flat.
I was playing the Vine Boom sound effect for a bunch of it. Somebody reminded me that I did that during the first one. I was like, oh yeah, that's how I survived.
Yeah. And there was, did you notice the weird, he couldn't help himself. In that first part, it was like the one positive I pointed out was like this Anthony Hopkins robot character. He had something going on there a little bit. And then what they do with him in this movie, when they kind of bring him back with these deer horns, and he just shoots him like a superhero. Like he has a cape, and he does the superhero landing even, and he's like punching a bunch of people just like Superman. It's like, just let it go, man.
I thought he was gonna do more.
Yeah, I thought there was gonna be more plans for it.
Like he's separated from the whole rest of the story. Like, is that the extended cut? We just get to see him do whatever the fuck he was doing?
Yeah.
You just cut out another story?
And that was another one of the only characters that had like a setup or a framing that was like, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, almost.
There's a nugget there. There's almost a nugget there.
Little nugs.
Like, and in another alternate story, you could imagine this being like a key player in some kind of plot that goes somewhere or moves or... Yeah, everything is static. All these characters are completely static. I don't think any of them really change. Like, even the bad guy is just, hey, it's the bad guy from the first movie who didn't die, actually, but he's back. Now they can fight. They can do a lightsaber fight while falling.
But they're not lightsabers.
Cool.
But also, let's also
wink, wink.
Remind ourselves, the way he got resurrected, I was like, I've seen this exact same scene in a Star Wars movie. Couldn't tell you which one.
Oh, right. Yeah. Like the back to tanks. Yeah, you're right.
But it was like literally the same scene. Like 1000% the exact same scene.
Oh, yeah. I didn't even think about that.
Even up to him like strangling the henchman when he wakes up.
Oh, that annoying trope. Yeah.
Except in this one, the production looks so bad. Those tubes of light. I'm like, Jesus Christ. Is this a fucking furry's bedroom or something? Like, what the hell is this? Oh, it's so cool. The tubes of light. It's Jesus Christ.
There's that, or the like when the princess gets shot by the main character, and this kind of light effect comes out of the child, I guess, to indicate, oh, she's not actually dying, or there's some kind of magical element that they don't really explain in the moment. It's like, she's not actually dead. She's got magic, so the main character doesn't have to kill a child, even though that's the only thing that really gives her anything interesting.
Yeah. Editor's note, keep in the Vine Boom sound effect. I meant to play that on my phone. Yeah. There's a lot of really important sounding lines, you know?
That's like how it's written this way. Yeah, everything needs to sound important, but actually, when you think about how it sits in the story, isn't important at all.
No, it's just implied significance, and that's it.
Well, yeah, because like this empire, this enormous galaxy-wide empire is beaten literally by like one tiny group of farmers. It's ridiculous the way it's like displayed, because they're being attacked by the empire. They're not fighting back in some way. Like, their home is being destroyed. It's like, well, over grain, like they're just, you can't think about it because it just falls apart almost immediately. And it's like, well, why should I think about it if like if you're not even going to indulge in the story part of this?
Yeah, it's fucking embarrassing. It's fucking embarrassing. It feels crappily low budget, which is odd because I thought Netflix gave him a shit ton of money or something. They seem to have a lot of faith in the film in the way that they market it. It's fucking showing up at UFC and like these fucking airport gigantic banners for Rebel Moon. Like, holy shit. It's like a flagship property to them. But it looks like the cheapest fucking thing ever made. We're just going to fight in a barn. Again.
Yeah. And even like, I just refuse to believe it needed to look this bad. It didn't.
That was by choice.
Like, with the sets that were made, with like the costumes and whatnot, you could have done, sure, it might not have been great, but more than this. Because like, there really is something going on with the blocking, with the way they're using these sets, with where characters are moving and or not moving. Just like these really static, like action figure placement, like there's something rigid about it and like really unnatural, and no one has any chemistry. It's just really awkward feeling.
Yeah. Yeah, I hate it. I hate all of it. The only saving grace is just the funny shit. Again, I'm going to go back to that quartet scene was so good. The way Carrie Elwes screamed when he died. In slow-mo. And then we got the slow-mo fucking, it was like the scene from Blonde or something where they're like, murderer. Murder!
That's
you
right.
traitor! Yeah. There was another funny moment where like somebody put a bomb on one of the ships, and the pilot just kind of like casually looks back, and he's like, "Oh damn!" and then blows
That's
up.
right. Yeah, that's what I mean about the British villains. It's like unintentionally comedic.
Oh yeah.
Uh-oh. Bloody hell.
SpaghettiOs.
Yeah.
Oh blimey.
Yeah, dude. I've got to make an admission then. There were scenes in this where I did flick onto 1.25.
Nice.
I'm thankful for that Netflix feature. In fact, I'd argue it's the only way to make the Rebel Moon duology even watchable is with that.
It's a feature that they added. It's the only platform that you're legally allowed to view it on, and that's the way that they decided that people wanted to be able to see it. So it's valid.
Yeah, and it kind of evens out anyway with all the like slow-mo and whatnot.
Oh, true, yeah.
A normal
it's still
runtime,
a slow-mo film. Even in fast speed, it's still a very slow movie in every way. All right. Anything else? I fucking 2 out of 10. It was funny.
Honestly, no. Yeah, I can't remember what I gave the first part, but this is 1 out of 10, half star. Just unwatchable garbage. It's funny to like talk about and make fun of, but this is embarrassing. Like I don't know why anyone would give him money to make more of these after this, but
well, if people watch it,
my responsibility. Yeah. This is. I mean, it's not. It's just kind of like sad and just like, well, we've already had this discussion with part 1. I'm sure whenever this next zombie thing or whatever pop culture reference thing he wants to do next will come out, it would just be a similar kind of conversation, except each one gets slightly more scathing. And ever since BVS bringing that up, it probably has been that slow decline. Like every single one of his films since that point has been that, without much nuance in the discussion. It's just, what are we doing here?
What are we doing? Challengers, directed by Luca Guadagnino. I think I'm learning. And written by, forget how to pronounce his name, Justin Kuritsky, I think his name is, the potion seller.
Yeah, I'm glad you're saying it. Yeah.
Everybody look up the potion seller meme. He wrote a movie, and it's great. He wrote a Luca.
Yeah, what is it? Yeah,
film.
what is it? Give the full context for that, because I've seen a little bit here and there, but what is that about?
The potion seller meme, or
yeah, the potion seller meme. But then what's the link? Is what I'm saying, like, to writing this film.
It's the same guy. The guy that made the potion seller meme wrote the movie.
So just a random coincidence, because there's like nothing.
It's not really a coincidence because he's like a talented, funny guy.
Well, it's just because I look at his IMDb.
Yeah, no, this is his first like feature.
Right. Okay.
Which is crazy. He's actually married to Celine Song, also.
Okay.
Of Past Lives. And they both made love triangle movies, so we have to assume there's a third person in their relationship.
Interesting.
And who it is may surprise you. We got Trent and Atticus on the fucking score. Didn't even know that until the end credits started playing, honestly.
Oh, really? You couldn't tell?
And I think there's one more person credited. Well, yeah, it was such a different genre for them to tackle. There's like house beats. It was so high energy.
Yeah, it was using kind of like the palette of sounds they often use, but yeah, the way it was used in the film, I felt was like, oh, this is a different way to use their type of music. I don't know. Yeah.
That's what I love about Luca films. When I saw I Am Love, which was the first one that really blew me away, like the end sequence of that film, I was like, wow, the way that you're using music for this scene is like a new emotion. Like I'm experiencing something new watching this in the context of what's happening with the characters and the buildup and how it's shot and how the music is and the choice of what tone the music should be. It's never, obviously, you know, a great example would be fucking Rebel Moon, where it's like the most obvious fucking music you could possibly pick, and you're just doing it to manipulate a certain emotion in a way that's on the checklist, in a way that has been proven to be done for various checklist movies before, but it's experimenting and it's trying new things. And you can actually have like a heated, dramatic conversation between two characters and play a fucking house beat over it. And it still fucking works. And the pumped up energy nature of it not only works emotionally, but then it fits into the themes of like how, you know, the tennis game itself is like the love relationships and them competing over love and the energy that they display towards each other. Like it works in multiple layers, but it still works dramatically. It's a super well-made film. I loved it. I love this movie a lot.
I might do a spoiler warning because I'm bad about
spoiler warning.
Jumping around.
Watch the movie, everybody.
But definitely see the damn movie because it definitely wasn't what I was expecting, actually. And I'll mention that first because after seeing it and like really enjoying myself, I had a few conversations with people, and I don't know if there was like a particularly bad like UK trailer or something, but a trend I was seeing is that people were saying like that film looks bad. What do you mean it was good? And then I went and watched the UK trailer, and it's like, it is awful. It makes the film look like garbage. It looks like a really like run-of-the-mill, like boring sports movie. All of the focus, not that surprisingly, is on Zendaya because she's like the biggest name in the film and is what they're using to try and sell it. But it spoils like major sections of the movie and like surprises to me that like, oh wow, like you just showed that in the trailer.
I was caught off guard by the injury, but they showed it in the trailer.
Exactly, yeah. That was straight up in the trailer.
And note to everybody who cares about movies, if there's a movie you know you're going to see anyway, if let's say you're in a movie theater and they start playing a trailer for something you don't want to see, either go to the bathroom or do what I do if I'm stuck in that situation. Close your eyes and just hum lightly to yourself. It actually fucking works. Don't give a shit about whether or not people think you're crazy, it's for you. Don't give a shit about them. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
You won't see the trailer. You'll be a better person from it. So I'm glad I didn't watch this trailer because I watched it afterwards and I was like, yeah. I'm glad I didn't.
Yeah, I was
I'm
glad
I didn't have any of that information before going into it because the dramatic effect of experiencing it in the order that the writer wrote the film in, worked really
the way
well.
it was edited and the way, the intention of it is so clearly to kind of catch you off guard in that moment. And it's a lingering question over the movie. It's like, because it's jumping between these different time periods and you see in the later sections that Zendaya isn't playing anymore and she's a big time player in the flashbacks. So you're like, well, what happened there? There's clearly something to address there. And they do. But yeah, so it's a shocking idea to spoil that in a trailer. And I'm sure that wasn't directors or anyone.
Yeah, of course.
Any of the creatives' choices. This is pure just.
I think it was MGM that made the trailer.
Yeah, that's not surprising. Yeah. But I was kind of surprised that this was evoking Whiplash for me. Kind of what you were saying about how the setting and how they explore the relationships, like in Whiplash, for the example, with the drummer and like the visuals of drumming and how everything, like the aesthetics of it, the way you can edit around that, the way you can, diegetically like put music into the score and edit around it. It's also true to, the sportsmanship of tennis and the competition of tennis and the kind of, it's a bugbear of mine when sports movies, when the action is happening, when they're playing the sports, that there is like this energy and there's like, they're employing this energetic way of shooting the action. But then when it's just characters talking or exposition, it's like flat and it doesn't match the energy. Whereas this film, like the dialogue scenes are just as exciting to me. They're just as thoughtful, just as creative, and it drives it along in a way that it's the resolution of it almost isn't even about the tennis in the end, and it's more about this three-way kind of warped relationship that brings up these questions of competition, masculinity. That seemed to be the focus to me, was this kind of warped dynamic between these two guys where it's like there's something between them that's deeper than they're letting on, and it's being teased out at certain points. And just the journey of watching the start point of them being kind of hating each other, or at least having this tension between them, and jumping between these flashbacks where they were best buds, they grew up together. One of them taught the other one how to jerk off. They're like that level of close. And the way it's jumping around, revealing new dynamics, changing dynamics as it goes along, and like Whiplash, building up to this like huge crescendo set piece ending that kind of concludes it all and wraps up all of these more confusing threads or things that felt a bit more muddled to me as the story was unfolding as far as like structure is concerned, because it does dart around a lot as far as like 1 minute it's 13 years later, then it's a week ago, then it's 8 years later previous, and it does jump around a lot in the structure, and it takes a while for that to pay off as far as like, that's kind of why you were delving in there, that's paying off now. And the way this comes together at the end is really satisfying and subverts you in a way that you weren't necessarily expecting. That conclusion is like so fantastic, the way that builds up.
I think that the time jumping is, it makes the film itself, like the perspective of you watching the film, it really just feels like the back and forth is to try and tie into the nature of like a tennis game. The back and forth, like you might as well have had that sound effect play every time it cuts back. Maybe it did, maybe I didn't notice. But that does feel like a very intentional like way to present the film. And also it was really clever because of, the fact that they did jump back and forth. They were able to really effectively and properly, ideally utilize the concept of revealing information in the correct order. There's information that happens, in the past sections that make more sense to reveal later than some of the future sections. And so in that sense, it's really well put together. And I also, even with it jumping around so much, I was never confused about what was going on or like what time it was.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was about to compliment.
And the actors, like they're it's not like they put a bunch of old age makeup on them or anything. So they don't look that different, but the way that the story is told and the way that you can see their dynamics, there are title cards too. But, you know, they even use the weather as a way to signify what period in time it is. They're like, oh, there's a big storm before the final match, etc.
Yeah, costume design, hair. There was a good one of those that I've noted down actually, where that emphasized the like different dynamic of the relationship in that point of time. I think it was one of the flashbacks to the night before, or at least like a week before, or somewhere close, where the brown-haired fella, he's like clicking his fingers and he can't remember the name of their child they have together. And, like pauses for a second, clicks his fingers, brings up, oh yeah, Lily, grow up. And that just felt like a nice diegetic way to communicate that without, you know, screeching everything to a halt and like really over explaining. It just felt like a natural, and I feel like this is one of his skills as a director, is these like really believable relationships and just way of communicating, and this sexual tension that's like a huge part of it. And yeah, these believable character dynamics and the surprising amount of depth they're able to squeeze into that. The breakneck 2 hours, and you feel like you get a real good like impression of these three characters, and pretty expansive like looks into the way their psychology works and the way they think about each other and the way they tick. And especially, man, the way it builds up to that. You know, it's like every sports movie, there's these two guys that used to get on, they don't anymore, they're going against each other in a tennis match, and depending on who wins, they're like high stakes. But the way they set the stakes and make you think, oh yeah, like he doesn't know about the cheating, so in that awesome sauna scene where they're like mind fucking each other, trying to like figure out where they stand with each other and set these like bombs and traps, and yeah, he thinks he's getting one over, bringing up the affair. Then you find out he already knew about the affair, and it's more about the throwing the game thing, and the way that's revealed with him communicating the tick as the way to reveal that, yeah, I'm throwing the game, and even though I'm losing, I am winning now. And the way that just robs all the like energy from the other character for a second, and that seeing that turmoil. Awesome performances. Those three characters, there's so much going on there. It's so exciting and unpredictable.
The build-up is super satisfying, and the way that ideas are reincorporated and set up in ways like I when I was watching that, like, oh, you know, you do this tick sort of thing. You don't have to tell me. You can just tell me. I didn't think immediately when I watched that, like, oh yeah, that's going to be reincorporated later.
Oh, that's obvious. That's exactly, yeah.
But then just as it was coming up to it, I was like, ooh, I know it's going to happen. I was so excited. I was like, I hope they do this. And they did it. It's very satisfying. It's a very, the movie just gives you what you want narratively in terms of like a satisfying buildup and watching things get to these high energy levels. And then just obviously like the music complementing that so well, and the filming style, because much like the energy of the music and the energy of the characters and the drama crescendos over the course of the film, the filming style, it really doesn't play its cards too early. It's very much more reserved in terms of how scenes are shot, in terms of how scenes are edited. In the first chunk of the film, the first 15 minutes, I'm like, you know, I was actually watching the first bit of the film being like, is this going to be like kind of like a really basic bitch filmed Luca film? Like, what's going on here? Like, some of the cuts were a little too quick. It didn't feel as, you know, like purposeful in framing. And I wasn't seeing as many of these like, lovely shots that I'm used to seeing in his films. And I'm like, well, I guess I don't know. Maybe this is just one of his studio projects. This is where he just has too much money. But then as the film went on, I was like, okay, wait, no, it's actually a great choice that they were so reserved near the beginning of the film, because then it provides the contrast of how things are shot later. And it does build up, not only just in the dialogue scenes, where I started to notice, like, oh, damn, that really low angle with Zendaya, like, really communicates a lot with how the character is feeling in her face. And then the tennis matches, especially. The first time we see a tennis match, I believe, from my memory, it's almost, it's super static, just fixed position camera in a way that it's like if you were flipping back and forth between monitors, like doing a sports broadcast or something almost.
Yeah.
Just like two fixed camera positions, and that's pretty much it. And then the scene after that, you get a bit more fluidity to the movement, and it starts to become shot almost like a bit more normal of a scene. The scene after that, it's just focused purely on Zendaya getting closer and closer and closer. You don't even see the other character she's shooting against. The ball's like going past the camera. Lots of great use of depth. And then the final scenes of how they decide to shoot a tennis match that we see in the film, like they're getting so much crazier and crazier and crazier in terms of how they shoot the scene that I wasn't sure that they'd be able to one up it. And there were some ideas of like, I'm thinking in my head, like, oh, could they even do this? Like, might they try something like this?
The CG ball.
A lot of what they wind up pulling off, you'd think would just look like shit if anybody else tried it. And it's super ambitious, and I can't believe that they actually pulled it off and it looked fantastic. So, some of the POV shots of the actual players, he's like, you can see him hit the racket, like, oh, and the sound design, like, gah! And then the huge moment of when the camera becomes the ball.
Yeah, like Big Lebowski bowling ball style, is jumping around.
And I'm like, they're doing it. They're doing it, and it looks fucking awesome. I was literally having in the music and everything. I was literally just saying to myself in the theater, like, "Oh fuck yes!" Like I was so excited.
I'd love to see a breakdown of whatever special effects company handled that shot, because man, it's like just right, because there's so much motion, obviously, from the perspective of the ball, where you don't really get a second to like criticize the imagery or the fidelity of it, because there's so much motion. But it still looks good. You're not like lost in what's going on. The action is so clear. Everything's so well choreographed and so well shot. And man, it just singes into your brain. There's so many great images in the film, so many great shots, and just using that court, that like restrictive space of that like rectangle, and what they get out of that, breaking the 180-degree rule, using these angles, getting like these close-up shots of like Zendaya's shadow like moving as her legs, and just like these sensitive, thoughtful touches. It's just, and this kind of like visual tension you're talking about, that it does escalate as it goes, just like the match, just like the relationship with the characters. That side of it is brilliant.
Like that's what fucking cinema is approaching something in a way where you think, okay, how can I shoot this in a way that is meaningful and works cinematically? Any other film, like director for hire, et cetera, like 99.9% of directors, you ask them, you give them the same script, and you have like 6 different tennis matches. They're not going to go crazy with how they shoot it. They're not going to do such an incredible contrast of all the different ways that you could possibly shoot a scene and layer it and order it in a way that is the most emotionally effective to be a crescendo along with the emotions in the film. Like, just most people aren't going to fucking do that. They're not going to have the idea to do that. They're not going to have the ambition to do that. We were just talking about fucking Rebel Moon Part 2. They didn't do anything crazy. Like, we see the barn so many times. If you just shot every fight scene differently, it would be interesting, right? Like John Wick 4, they were like, okay, we're going to do fucking Hotline Miami top down. Like, that's crazy, right? That's cool. Like, shoot it differently. If you know that, especially, a lot of what would be happening visually would be more of the same otherwise, then I think there is some sort of, almost obligation to try and approach a scene in a different way, just to have a new scene instead of like you're watching the same scene visually. They're completely different scenes, exact same setting, a lot of the exact same movements, debatably. But he manages to capture it in a unique way every time, that every single time you're seeing something new, and it's exciting. and it's it's incredible. I really, really love Luca, and it's crazy that he made a fucking Zendaya movie, and I hope it makes money.
A Zendaya tennis movie.
Yeah, what the fuck? A potion seller, sexy Zendaya tennis movie.
I don't think we talked about Bones and All, which was his previous movie, right? Which I enjoyed for the most part, but like, man, this felt like such a step up to me.
Oh yeah,
like such an improvement. Like I'm not probably going to revisit. I might even bump down the Bones and All thing. It had some okay characters, some good scenes, some good visuals. It's not sticking with me. Or didn't it excite me or like inspire me in the same way this movie is, where it's like, this is more kind of the Suspiria Luca we're getting right now. This is showing me something intense, something new. Yeah, something challenging.
And also, every single one of his movies are entirely different.
I love
He's
that.
not just doing the same thing over and over. Like, every single one of his films have completely different approaches and challenges.
I think that's a real skill
ideas.
to show off that range. Yeah, because man, we haven't talked much about the dialogue, but there is a lot of awesome dialogue in this movie. I love that line where they address the kind of sexuality of the movie with are we talking about tennis? I feel like that's a line like everyone is thinking for a lot of these, like, they're like eating churros in each other's faces, like 3 inches from each other. It's like there's this real charged like sexual tension, and down to the costumes, to the sweatiness, the emphasis on the muscles and everything. There is, and not like showing like in any like detail really, like a sex scene. All the actual sex is implied, which I thought was awesome. It's like almost more sexual and more tension without showing that, like implying all of it and leaving that.
It's kind of funny that they set up that entire first scene, and especially with that being like part of the marketing too. I didn't watch the trailer, but I knew that image existed of like, ooh, they're gonna have a threesome or something. And it's really funny that they set that up so early on and kind of just like blue ball the audience. Like right when things start getting like, it's getting fucking steamy. Am I watching a sex movie, Luca? And then they're like, no. But it sets the tone, which is kind of great.
I think that's one of the best scenes in the movie. That kissing scene when they're in that hotel room. Like, you learn so much about those two characters, the two male tennis players, especially in that scene. You get the backstory where they talk about their upbringing together and going to the private schools that they're living in, getting that backstory, and then talking about the jerking off story, sitting on the bed with them, and it ending the way it does with them being the ones like making out and her just kind of like watching. It's like, I love that the stage that sets in and of itself, and like the implications of that, and what they don't even address about like parts of that. So this is so interesting, like what it's bringing up about these kind of like masculine relationships, and they only felt, I guess, like safe to do something like that with this like woman in the middle, and they're like simultaneously fighting over this woman, and
her level of control too, and the way she utilizes that, and obviously like gets off on it.
And the egos like attached to, the winning and the losing aspect, but they're also like playing doubles at the time. And there is, it's just such an interesting dynamic. And especially like where they take it, like revealing, you have more of a sympathetic angle when he's like living out of his car and saying about he can barely pay for his hotel one because you don't know the full context. And when you kind of learn more about him and how there's almost like an aesthetic he's putting on, he's past 30 and he's still like pretending he's the struggling artiste type thing, the struggling sports player. He's just playing the sport to survive type thing. When there's that line later on where Zendaya says when they're talking about how like what level of pieces of shit they are, and she says something like, "Hey, I'm just stopping by. This is where you live." It's like brutal, like tense moment they have, and which all resonates with a use of the kind of slow-mo we normally complain about, but it was used intentionally, which I thought was interesting, because there's also like slow-mo cameras being used as well, high frame rate cameras intentionally. But then in this one scene to highlight this moment, they use this different style of slow motion to create a different effect, which I thought was really interesting, and I don't think I've really seen that before.
Yeah, I was actually kind of caught off guard. I'm like, oh wow, this this doesn't have to look bad.
Yeah, because at first I thought, oh, did they not film this in slow-mo then? But then it's like, it keeps going. It's like, oh shit, this is intentional. Yeah, yeah.
No, it's like it's a choice. It's a choice, yeah. Which is really cool. Like
Very cool.
he's one of the most impressive directors working today. Like he's just so confident about what he's able to show, and he takes risks because he's creating new things. Not a lot of people are doing that. Even a lot of other great directors that we see, you know, some of the biggest names in the fucking industry, they're creating a lot of the same things they've already done. We're not seeing anything new. We're seeing something great, right? With a lot of these big name directors, but Luca is constantly pushing what he can show and what he can communicate in a way that just like not many other people are, which is really cool. I hope he makes a million more movies.
Yeah, I'm glad people are enjoying it. I'm glad how many broken rackets were in the movie. So that was one of my takeaways. I've been to Wimbledon, and that like happens a lot. Like people getting angry. I remember this German player that I saw was like he smashed a few of his rackets, and yeah.
I don't have many complaints about the film. There are some lines where when I heard them, I was like a little like unsure. But in the greater context of the film, I think I'm of the impression that like they work for this film, and it's not exactly, you know, like a super. It's not like the most grounded approach to a story. There is kind of a heightened sense of reality to this, and a heightened sense of
it definitely feels heightened and kind of exaggerated.
Yeah, the characters and their dynamics and the sexuality. Things are a little just pushing the boundaries of what, you know, would happen in real life or what someone would say. And in that sense, I feel like, you know, if this exact same script was given to a different director, it just would not have worked.
Yeah.
Not to shit on the script. It's a good script. Justin, Potion Seller. It's a good script for sure. But damn, I'm super happy that Luca worked with it.
Elevated by the direction, yeah.
And now I guess he's got another couple projects. I think he's working with Luca again, I heard, but I'll have to look that up.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I'm glad that they like each other, and I'm glad that Luca feels that he is able to get something real meaty out of his writing.
Well, yeah, if we get more films like this, I'm very much for it. Yeah, pleasantly surprised. What do you think of the product placement? I saw a few conversations about this kind of stuff.
I think if any fucking movie is going to have product placement, it's going to be a fucking sports movie, right?
That's the thing, right? Because all the rackets have like logos on. The trainers are everywhere. The logos on the socks.
There's no sport that exists without brands. Like they're fucking everywhere. You can't have a sports movie without product like it's literally not. But it would be weirder if they didn't have product placements in this film. It would feel bizarre and unnatural. I'd be like, this is not a sports
even like a
movie.
Even like a scene that doesn't have any sports action going on, like the Dunkin' like breakfast bagel scene. Again, it didn't distract me beyond just like, well, yeah, it was just someone eating breakfast. Dunkin' does exist, I guess, and the scene isn't like Uncharted where it's like, we're going to Papa John's now, let's stop the movie and hello everybody, let's Papa John's. It was like the character, he's hungry because he's living in his car. It's you know, enforcing the character. There's more going on than just the product placement, I guess. And as you say, if someone's drinking a Pepsi or a Coke or whatever, it fits.
I was never off put by it at all.
Yeah.
Like it works in the movie. It doesn't need to feel like a distraction from what's happening in the film. Like I feel like there's a symbiosis between showing brands and it also being a fucking sports movie. Like these people are walking brands. Their characters are brands, right? So maybe it could have been handled in a way that would have upset me, but I did not feel upset by it at all.
Yeah, completely agree.
Yeah.
I got a shout out the editing too.
Incredible editing.
Just the timing of the cuts in here. yeah, hopefully this hasn't released too early in the year to be forgotten when it comes to that conversation. Come wrap up. It also has the multiple timeline thing, so it might get some attention. Because that's all that people seem to think editing is if when you have different timelines splicing between each other. But
yeah, I mean, that's the Oscars. So hopefully, yeah. I hope it becomes an Oscar movie. I hope that this gets recognized at the Oscars.
I do too. Yeah, a lot of just technical skill just being shown off in a way that's like this is so exciting. This is so different. The build up. I keep bringing it up, but like that. Those last like 20 minutes are just wonderful. Like, it's such a like expressive, like tense, charged build up to that end, and it just the way everything it's just payoff. Oh, that thing you thought like didn't have that much point earlier. Nah, it was there for a reason. This is all. Just trust me. This is all going to come together, and it's like so satisfying. And it ends at the perfect moment. It's not like it's nothing I'd cut out or trim out.
Yeah,
I thought this was wonderful.
Yeah, it did not feel fucking slow at all. It's over 2 hours, 2 hours, 11 minutes. Super well paced. Would love to watch it again. Glad that you enjoyed it, and I'm glad that you were able to see it. Glad that it didn't have some sort of dumb botched UK release or something.
Yeah, yes, it's pretty widely released here. Did you catch it in IMAX?
Yeah. I went out of my way to see it in an IMAX.
What was that like? I don't think it was playing in my local one.
Well, it wasn't as like crazy as like Oppenheimer IMAX or anything.
No.
I would have to see like a side-by-side comparison, I guess, of, you know, if the framing was that, or sorry, the aspect ratio was like that different in the regular theatrical release. But I will say that I did definitely get I did definitely get something extra out of the experience just from having like the big screen and then like the big sound, because the sound was so fucking important in that movie, and just the just being, you know, lovingly bombarded by the soundtrack and everything. Just the mixing was great, by the way. There's so much music,
the sound editing,
and it's so loud, and unlike a Christopher Nolan film or many movies that exist, especially IMAX movies, unlike those, it was actually properly mixed, and I could hear the characters, and it never felt like there was something wrong with it. So I'm glad that I saw it with like the optimal screen and sound. And it was also like I felt obligated to do it because I was like, why the fuck is this playing in IMAX? Like,
it's really random, yeah.
But I'm glad it did. And I'm glad that there seems to be like some level of faith in this movie and the project. I guess Zendaya would be the biggest reason for the studios to have that amount of faith. But she worked well for the role, and I hope more people see it. I wonder how it's doing box office wise. I'm giving this one a 9 out of 10. I fucking loved it. This is cinema.
This is cinema. I'm just slightly below you for now. This is like a high 8 out of 10 for me, a 4-star. Definitely with a like. Could definitely go up on rewatch too. When I think about like any issues I had, I'm sure those would evaporate on rewatch, because it was more just like, early on we're jumping around. Where's this going? What's this leading to? But it does completely pay off with what it's building up, what it's leading to, and then some. So yeah, big ups from me.
Let's see. I'm just looking up the box office numbers. Looks like it's at like 50 million now.
That's on a $55 million budget too. I'm seeing about 52 million as of 6th of May. And
it's still got some longevity to it, apparently. Like, there's still people seeing it. Like, it's not dead in the water. So
yeah, it doesn't surprise. Zendaya is kind of a big deal, especially like after Dune and everything. I don't know. That's quite. I don't know. The budget there, 55 million. I'm glad they gave it to him. I don't know if they're gonna see 150 million back on this to see the green they want, but
yeah, I mean, I hope it makes profit. And, if it gets Oscar buzz, there'll be that longevity to it. I'm hoping there's a 4K Blu-ray for it. I don't know if they've announced one, but
you'd imagine
I would totally buy it. If it's in IMAX, you'd think.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, what a treat.
What a treat! All right. Magnolia is a film directed by Paul Thomas Anderson. Maybe the second best Paul Anderson working in the business. Right behind WS. This is a film that I watched once when I was younger, and
same.
There are parts of it that really stuck with me, and
same
parts of it that at a young age I remember noting things about, like, the filmmaking itself that really stuck out to me. I think it might be one of my earliest memories of me thinking about a oneer, or like noticing a oneer, and kind of appreciating just the coordination that would necessarily have to exist to like pull off a shot without making any breaks in the cuts. I don't know what age I watched it first, but this came out in 1999. Crazy year for movies.
Awesome.
And so I guess I was like, in theaters, I was probably like 8 years old or something, but I don't think I watched it when I was 8. I think I watched it when I was like 13 or something. Yeah,
I would have been a teenager.
And I recommended it for the podcast, and we revisited it. We watched it fresh, new and exciting. It was like experiencing it new again, especially with the context of, like, I guess who a lot of these actors are. I didn't really know at the time. It wasn't as familiar. Also being more familiar with PTA's style and being able to absorb a bit more about the like dynamics of the characters and exactly what was going on. And I would say it still holds up. I would say it's pretty great. How do I describe this movie in terms of its plot? It's like an interweaved, intertangled web of characters.
A Strand type film.
Yeah, it's like if Crash was a good movie. It's like if 2005 Crash.
If the concept of Crash was actually fleshed out.
Yeah. Basically. And so you have each of these characters struggling in different ways that are connected in ways and are experiencing similarly themed struggles. And each of these characters is just so fleshed out and interesting. And even though there's a lot going on, and even though it's over 3 hours long, there's not a single one of their stories that just feels like boring or like, this shouldn't exist in the movie. What did you think? I'll let you talk about it.
Yeah, interesting. Because I had a similar experience, but from like a different angle with this film. Yeah, I'd only seen it the once. I remember kind of being overwhelmed by it at the time, but also finding it to be extremely memorable in ways. Like starting with the opening, especially something to do with that conundrum with the suicide attempt that becomes a homicide at the start of this movie to illustrate this causation thing that it's going for. It's one of the most like memorable openings to a movie just ever to me. That something about that is like really stuck with me and has illustrated quite a good way for a movie as big and kind of bloated and ambitious as Magnolia, with that 3 hour like 5 minute runtime. You need some cohesive glue quickly to establish kind of what we're going for, because this is a big like bumbling 9 main character type story. You need to set the scene with something that can keep this together, and I feel like that intro with those 3 little vignettes is such a like poignant, clever way to get that side moving and kind of quell those fears you might have with the structure, with the runtime. But that's kind of for me where I do get more hung up, where there is so much about this film I love, and I feel like there probably is a Let There Be Blood or Boogie Nights tier film in there somewhere for me. I think this film needs a little bit of pruning, personally, with some of these characters. Because the ones that work, They really work.
Is there like a particular story?
Yes, actually, because as you was kind of joking with like, how do I even describe this movie? I had to like note down these characters and like color code them and like figure out like what is it about this that isn't really gelling for me. So I boiled it down into 9 main characters, which is already crazy just to say in and of itself. Like,
yeah,
how often does that work? The answer is very, very rarely. And that's part of what is interesting. And I'm glad you recommended this movie for this because, yeah, we did Crash semi-recently. And there is something that draws a lot of directors about these big, like, overlapping stories that are loosely connected, but they're not. They're like vignette stories that converge at a certain point. It's like big and it's grand and it's trying to do a lot. And they often seem to fall into these similar kind of pitfalls that sometimes make me question if the ambition is needed when perhaps you'd have a tighter, better movie if you would just prune it a little bit and take some of that ambition, at least reel it back somewhat. But go into these 9 characters, right? So you got Tom Cruise, this like manosphere grifter, who personally I think is the best character in the movie, the most interesting, probably my favorite performance.
Ahead of its time, in a way. Not to say that didn't exist at the year.
Because it's kind of like mocking, at the time it was like the pickup artistry, like people releasing books. There was that kind of trend, which is now, of course, like morphed
it's just
into
Andrew Tate now.
Andrew Tate, the manosphere, all this kind of nonsense, which is saying
the more things change, the more
similar
things stay the same.
Yeah, so for this to come out in 99 and that part was like, oh, this is awesome. Like how true what they're doing with this character, and like not just kind of bring it up to make fun of it, but kind of explore like, why is this man the way he is? Why is he putting on this facade? And that's kind of like, yeah, as you alluded, a lot of the characters have some kind of turmoil or some strife in their life that they haven't come to terms with or gotten over or something like this. And that's kind of one of the main strings that attaches them. But yeah, so 9 characters: Tom Cruise, his dying dad, the dying dad's wife, Julianne Moore, like the trophy wife character, and then the dying dad's carer, played by Philip Seymour Hoffman. That's like one kind of group of characters that are linked in a story going on. Then you have the kid genius game show little boy, I guess, juxtaposed against the William H. Macy game show boy from decades ago, who was that equivalent character then and was like known for being a kid genius, but now he's like washed up and he can't pay rent and he's like
early bloomer. He
has a lot of like, yeah, exactly. A lot of issues going on there. So there's that little pocket of characters. And then the other pocket, which is where the one I'm just not into as much, where you have the drug addict prostitute who is the daughter of the game show host, who is dying of bone cancer. And I guess we're in full spoilers for this.
Spoilers!
His thing is the kind of molestation sort of angle with him. And then the prostitute and this policeman character played by John C. Reilly, who have their thing going on. So Tom Cruise, his dad, Julianne Moore, Philip Seymour Hoffman, and William H. Macy, adore all of those. I think all of those are pretty much perfect for me. It's the other characters I'm not as sold on. It's not even that they're bad necessarily, or that it pulls it down too much. It's just so big, so bloated, and I feel like it does hurt some of the pace. I'm like,
just the amount of time they dedicate to it.
Yeah, there are scenes where you're getting a little glimpse of this kid genius character or this policeman. It's like, yeah, this is kind of interesting, but man, what's going on over there with Julianne Moore or William H. Macy is just so much more intriguing or exciting to me. And these other ones don't really match, especially when these two older characters, the dying dad character, Tom Cruise's dad, and the game show older man, they're both kind of similar characters, and they're supposed to echo each other. They're both at death's door. One is bedridden and like on morphine and can barely do anything, and the other one has like a bone cancer. He's still lucid, and it's like a different way of confronting death, I suppose, and that's what makes the two of their stories like valid on their own. But to me, it felt more like, I don't know, these kind of ideas are being explored already from one of these perspectives, and I'm really into the one that's happening around Tom Cruise. But then when we're revisiting that same kind of idea with the game show host dying, and that just feels like we've already visited these sort of emotions. The whole molestation thing doesn't have the punch in the same way to me that Tom Cruise, him coming to visit his dad and that dynamic going on there, and Julianne Moore and her realizations about herself. Like that to me is just so much more gripping, so much more focused. And the only reason I wouldn't like completely cull the whole like game show thing is I really love that William H. Macy character. I think that makes the inclusion of the other Kid Genius character kind of worth it to me, for what they explore there.
Yeah.
But just this way I've had to lay all this out is like so like complicated and so confusing, and I'm like thinking, well, perhaps if it was a film where the main focus was Tom Cruise, his dad, Julianne Moore, Philip Seymour Hoffman's character got maybe more development because he's more of like an audience sort of stand-in character, and there's like dialogue that he has that scene where he's talking about like, this is the part in the movie where you help me and this kind of stuff. He doesn't get too much development. Maybe I would have liked to have seen his character get fleshed out and maybe trim some of the other stuff that wasn't working as much for me. But yeah, that's what's confusing and complicated about this, is because I still do like this. I like where it goes. I think some of the when the frogs start raining, and everyone gets that like metaphorical and physical slap to the face, like realization, like the William H. Macy, he's like climbing the ladder. He's like, he needs that moment of realization of like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing with your life? He's got this obsession with like braces because he's in love with this waiter at this bar he frequents, and there's something really sad about it. But yeah, there is more of it's not quite as satisfying as like a Challenger's, where it like crescendos to this big like moment where it feels like, oh, the sporadic structure is making sense the way it's coming together. You get that a little bit here. But I just couldn't help but think like, I do like this, but I would love this if some of it wasn't here. It reminds me of like what you were saying about Beau is Afraid, another big 3-hour epic type, interesting, weird experiment. But I think you wanted that a bit trimmed as well for what it was playing with, and could see where it was going, but there were just points where it just wasn't connecting with you, and that's kind of what I was having here.
Yeah, I don't think that there's a single character that I wouldn't want in this film, but I do agree that it does feel like a bit disproportionate in terms of which characters are given more screen time and more weight and more opportunity to explore themselves. And yeah, John C. Reilly's character, it does get a bit like kind of repetitive for what he's experiencing.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's no character that I would just remove their story entirely or anything.
It'd be hard to. It would be very difficult to with the way it's written anyway, you know. It is ambitious, I'll give it that.
It's a really interesting film because this is his third movie, and I still haven't seen Hard 8.
No, me neither.
We saw Boogie Nights. We talked about it on the podcast. Absolutely loved that.
Yeah.
I would say Boogie Nights is maybe equally as ambitious, but just kind of works together as a whole piece better.
Yeah, I prefer it.
Yeah.
I think it works a lot better as a whole piece. And there's quite a good... I didn't manage to finish it. I watched 30, 40 minutes of it. It's like a behind-the-scenes Magnolia making of hour-long documentary on YouTube. Where they were talking about this like process, and PTA at one point is like, yeah, after the success of Boogie Nights, I just wanted to jump into making a movie immediately. So the expectations didn't get too high, and that I just had to do it, and I couldn't just sit. So considering that, and he had some story about staying in like William H. Macy's cabin for like weeks and just writing this movie in like a weird haze while he was afraid of a snake. I don't know.
That's kind of funny.
Yeah, he's like an interesting guy in the way, just an excellent writer too. Like I love all the ideas he's playing with here. I think these characters are really interesting. And I mean, after I finished the film and I was feeling this way about the pacing and whatnot, I was looking through like the trivia on IMDb, and I saw one that stood out. In an interview with Mark Moron in January of 2015, PTA was asked if he had the opportunity to recut the film, He replied, "I'd slice that thing down. It's way too fucking long. It's unmerciful how
that's
long
funny.
it is." He added that
That's great.
maybe a few trajectories in the film's plot lines could have been eliminated.
Make a director's cut. Release the Snyder cut. Except this time it'll be shorter.
The inverse Snyder, and yeah, make it shorter.
Yeah, why not?
Oh, that'd be awesome. I'd be down with that.
There's like 4 different cuts of Blade Runner. There's like 3 different cuts of...
Blade Runner, yeah. Apocalypse Now was a few.
Thank you. That's exactly what I was trying to remember the title of. Apocalypse Now. But yeah, I don't think that this has as much of a like huge cultural knowledge of this movie existing as those two.
No.
It has a lot of ratings on IMDb though. So there's a good chunk of people that love it. It was nominated for a few Oscars. I think Tom Cruise got a nomination. None of them won, but it's one of those things where it's like, you know, I'm glad that it got recognized. Screenplay and original song.
And wasn't John C. Reilly the only one to get like lead actor at the Oscars or whatever, like a nod? Everyone else was supporting, according to them, which I thought was interesting. Because we had this conversation for Crash. Right?
He didn't get a nomination for this.
Oh, okay.
There were only 3 nominations. John C. Reilly was not in it.
Okay. Must be confused with a different award ceremony or something.
No. Yeah, but he does it. You know, I think it's literally when you're determining, at least for the Academy Awards, when you're determining which one is lead versus supporting. I think it's literally just based on screen time, and so John C. Reilly would inherently be the lead of the film because his character got the most screen time.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's weird. I would call this, just based on the way that everything comes together, and there's so much that I love about it, I would almost call it like a little overly ambitious.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting to see where this sits in his filmography. And, you know, it's crazy that this being anyone's 3rd movie is like incredible. Boogie Nights being someone's 2nd movie is like fucking what the heck? What the demon?
Yeah, what's your secret? Probably a lot of cocaine.
And he made all of these 3 films, I think he made before he was 30.
Now, why you gotta be telling me that?
He started young. That's fucking insane.
Yeah, that is insane.
Yeah. And it's kind of interesting and funny, Tom Cruise being in this as well.
But a little bit of irony to it.
There's like maybe a couple movies where you see him play kind of a scumbag. What was that movie called?
Because, yeah, I guess he was on fire, right? Eyes Wide Shut, he was just after that. So it's quite an inverse character. You getting at Tropic Thunder, that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's part of what I was surprised by with that. Tom Cruise standing out with that type of character he's playing, with how just kind of he was. Did you see that whole drama about like the Rock or whatever and whatnot being
peeing
like
in bottles
and refusing to peeing in bottles and like
showing up 8 hours late?
Yeah, and like in these contracts, so you can't lose a fight, you can't play a certain type of person because it might hurt my image. Well, that's not on Tom Cruise's mind with this, because he's playing like a scumbag, a grifter, really. Just a red-pilling grifter.
And he's just as much of like a movie star in this generation. Like Mission Impossible and all that shit. Like he was selling tickets.
Oh yeah. They probably have to spend more on more on visual effects to hide some of the wrinkles or whatever. He's getting up there, but yeah, he's still getting butts in seats. But yeah, I really thought his performance was like layered and excellent, and the way it was like trickled out, like just what we were praising about Challenges, the way that interview, the framing of it, and the way he handles it. I love right before he sits down to do the interview, and he's kind of like mocking them with his just overt ego, like, hey, I'm like spitting gold right now. You're not filming? Yeah. He's like, his shirt's like not buttoned up, and like the scene cuts right as he sits down. It's like, so what do you want to know? It's like, you as the audience knows everything you really need to know about this guy. Yeah. It's like, yes, these scenes, I love the way they're written. I love the point they begin, the point they end, and what you've learned in that space between is always like so rich with like picking up about these characters.
Basically, you're just watching like his insecurities as a self-defense mechanism, which works well for the character. I could imagine, now that we're kind of like teasing the idea of like trimming it down and cutting things out, I could have watched a movie just of that character, like the Tom Cruise character.
Exactly, yeah. Mhm.
Just that character, that would have been a very fascinating film.
Because I really feel like there's enough going on.
Yeah. It's funny because Paul Thomas Anderson has really grown into a filmmaker, especially, that does such a great job with character studies that don't necessarily need intertwining stories. There Will Be Blood, obviously. The Master, which is funny because somebody said, I didn't fact check this, but I could imagine it would seem crazy for this not to be the case, that Tom Cruise got a little bit upset about that movie because it's just very obviously talking about Scientology without explicitly stating it.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny that he went along and made that one. That would be even funnier if Tom Cruise was in that one. That would be hilarious. He just didn't even know. Couldn't draw the conclusions.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I thought there was a hint of irony with that anyway, with him being this kind of like culty leader with his horde of followers that pay him for his beliefs, and the kind of dissonance there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. Like, people don't really reflect on these things, or maybe there's a part of themselves that knows it.
I don't know if it... Yeah, it's weird with him because he isn't like... You'd expect him to be more of a rock type figure, but he will pick challenging roles like Eyes Wide Shut or Magnolia and deliver a performance. It's like, oh, you're kind of like... You're the level of Psycho where you can just bring out this incredible performance and like really bring someone to life. Yeah, even despite all the other stuff that's going on there. He's supposed to be like a lovely guy.
What do you think about the repeated imagery or the number 82? Did you notice that?
I only did in retrospect, like looking up we're just trying to find some meaning out of the frog thing, obviously. And looking up Exodus 8.
Because it was fucking everywhere. Like, it was like fucking 30 times in the first like 40 minutes or something.
Because, I saw some people, when talking about this movie, are spreading this idea that like, oh, PTA didn't even know about Exodus 8:2 when writing it. And I said, no, that seems impossible with like how many references there.
Someone literally holds up a sign saying Exodus 8:2 in the film.
Yeah. I went to that frame and had a look after the fact. But yeah, I do think that's interesting, and does as to what I was saying earlier on about those opening vignettes and hammering home this idea of like this madness can actually happen, and this unexpected, like, how you interpret it is up to you. Like, is this too wild to be? Is this too much to be fate, or is this God, or is this determinism, or is this, what is this? Is this just chaos? That like core question at the beginning of it, and bringing it back home with the frog scene, using that as a way to like instigate all these character changes, or at least wrap the film up in a kind of crazy, funny, because I haven't really talked about the humor, and there's a lot of good humor in Boogie Nights too. But like there's like laugh out loud humor in this film, a dark sense of humor for sure. But there's like some awesome, weird, like with the frogs, just the timing of some of that, like the way that they're stopping like a suicide attempt with a frog falling through like the ceiling and hitting the gun out of his hand when William H. Macy is like getting in his car the next day, and there's just like frogs everywhere. Like the set is just hundreds of frogs, and he's like wiping them off his windshield. It's like very, very weird, a very strange sense of humor, like warped, but clever. There is like this underlying cleverness and sort of like empathetic understanding. It's not about like mocking people or trying to put people down, all these different types of people like the William H. Macy. It does find the humor there, but it does delve into the sadness of like, yeah, he was this child star basically that was pretty much abused, had all of his money taken from him that he earned being the child star, and then he's just kind of left. And he has like some of the saddest lines in the whole film. And most of the characters have that level of depth to them. They're bringing out stuff you wouldn't expect. They are fleshed out. They feel like humans. You know, people kind of like this, even in the melodrama that it does reach, especially with some characters like the little kid savant character. Some of the dialogue there, some of the ways the melodrama manifests, like it wasn't really working, like the
Mm-hmm.
melodrama of Tom Cruise going to see his father, or Julianne Moore in the pharmacy, her breakdown. I love that scene. Great performance. Yeah, so just some of these other notes, some of the melodrama just didn't come together for me, but yeah, it does. I don't want to overemphasize the critique. I just think it's interesting with this film and how it sits in his filmography. Yeah, this is really the only one of his I feel this way about, where, yeah, Inherent Vice is like weird and doesn't really work. And I'm not seeing the jewel that's in there, like with Magnolia, where there is like just so much good stuff to sift through.
Yeah.
It makes it very interesting to talk about and watch.
It does seem to fit like pretty snugly in between his masterpieces and his misfires. Like it's
Yeah, and it is like a combination of both.
there's masterpiece stuff within this, and there is a better film somewhere in here. What I found interesting is, you know, the parts that I definitely remembered from when I watched it when I was younger, the parts that really stuck with me, are some of my favorite parts of this watch as well. And it's just so clear, like, okay, yeah, that's why it stuck with me. Like that oneer, like the opening scene, like the raining frogs, and like Tom Cruise breaking down. Like those are the four, pretty much, that just stuck with me and had me experiencing like a real, like genuine emotional experience with the film. Like I was locked into it even at a younger age, and just it being able to present those ideas and emotions upon me, and me just not me really getting something genuine out of it in a way that you know, I wasn't confused about what I was watching, and I was able to appreciate it. I do love about the opening scene that they presented in kind of like a it's almost like a conspiracy, like crime scene documentary, and you've got like the imagery of like the circled line and the arrow of somebody like as if they're writing down like a football play or something. I forget exactly what that's called, that effect, but it's a very smart way to open the film. I agree.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
And I do want to mention about the frogs. Like that whole sequence is insane. The way that it's done practically, like that's a crazy ambitious thing to try to pull off.
Yeah,
like that's epic. It's actually epic. I never use that word.
yeah. No, it's like the correct use of the word. I think it's like a very clever blend of ILM getting some kind of scale effects in there, so they're not, you know, having real frogs like dying or whatever, being crushed. But I agree. Yeah, so in that behind the scenes documentary thing, there were some shots, or like showing the on set of some of those frog shots. And it is awesome, like the work they put in, the amount of these like models they have littered everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the thoughtful nature of, you don't even notice the combination of visual effects and practical. It's so well done, so well thought out, so convincing in how they do it. And it does it. There is something about it. And I remember having the feeling when I first watched it, like, this is crazy. Like, is this working?
Mm-hmm.
But it does. Like, it really does work for the film. It does drive everything home and put like a nice full stop on it. And and the fact that like you can actually do reading about it, and it is something that is rare, but like actually possible to happen, which is kind of the point of the movie, you know? Yeah, it's like it's a good way to summarize the story within itself. And it needed like a quick way to be able to summarize what it's throwing out there. Because you'd need like another 3 hours to like traditionally like wrap up like where these characters were going, what was happening. It's a good way to just be like, okay, the story's kind of wrapping up. Something crazy's happening. It's already been set up in ways with the 8-2 references everywhere, with that intro. It's not just coming out of nowhere, putting our hands up because we've written ourselves into a corner. It's like, nope, this is the right time to end this for these characters. This is a crazy, memorable ending. This is something you've definitely never seen before, and it's not something I've seen in other films that aren't, you know, The Prince of Egypt or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And what it's saying about this. Is it biblical? Is this just a freak chance thing? And the way you can interpret it is based on, the way you view these characters and the way you view life, and how we got here, and what to take from it. I guess, yeah, quite philosophical in that sense, which his best films do. And yeah, I love that angle of it.
We should mention the score. I think John Bryan did the score, who is, like, I don't think he's ever won an Oscar. I'm going to look him up.
No, he's definitely not like a household name.
Yeah, it's crazy because he is such a key component of so many of like the greatest films ever. Like literally.
Mm-hmm. Unsung hero.
And he's not even like, oh, he just happened to be involved. Like he's a part of what makes these films work. The pacing to the music, the rhythm of it, it really helps the scenes flow. Super well composed. And what was also interesting is, so I rewatched Madam Web recently, and damn, he's never even gotten a fucking nomination for Oscars. What the hell?
Wow.
Jesus Christ. That pisses me off. That actually makes me upset.
Is it because Amy Mann like got more credit for this soundtrack with the?
Well, I mean, she was original song written for the film.
Yeah.
She got that. But yeah, I rewatched Madam Web recently, and one of the best scenes in that film is where they try to do diegetic music playing alongside the score at the same time. It was like, oh, Britney Spears Toxic, but then somebody in the studio was like, no, because it has to be like, you have to have the tension music as well. And so you have two of these things competing and clashing in ways that just do not work at all, and it's fascinating. And what I found interesting about this film is there's like more than one point where they do have the non-diegetic score playing alongside some diegetic music in the film at the same time. But it's as if it were it's as if the score was written with that planned in a way, and it was just complementary enough. Where even though there were two things happening at once that were separate, they weren't feeling like they were necessarily competing. And it was a lot more subtle. And it was one of those things where it's like, oh, okay, I didn't even know you could do this in a way where it didn't feel awkward.
Yeah, and on that, how do you feel about that moment where each one of the major characters sings a line or two from this song, and each line is supposed to reflect something to do with their story?
I felt like that was a little cheese. Didn't love that scene.
It was definitely cheese. That was one of the moments where it goes into the more sort of melodrama.
Yeah.
But I don't hate it though, because I get what he's doing. It feeds more into like, that's super ambitious, and I get what you're trying to do, like giving us a moment of tying these characters together in a way that isn't as literal. But you're right, that it doesn't fully work. It feels a bit more like you imagine like COVID song, all these celebrities like having a few lines of a Beatles song or whatever. It's not quite that level, but you know.
Oh yeah, that's funny. Yeah, it is a little silly, and it does. I don't know if I need it to be in the film, sort of thing.
Yeah, that's what I mean about some of these moments of melodrama where it's like sometimes it really works and sometimes that's a bit of a miss. Didn't need that right there. And that just hurts more in a film that is just so long, like the 3 hours. I feel it at certain points, that's for sure. Even if I'm appreciating what I'm seeing, if the production is just consistently impressive all throughout. Most of the performances too, there isn't really... That's part of what is interesting about this movie to me, is it's not the standard issue you might see in one of these big films. It's almost entirely down to the writer-director. You can't point at like the actors necessarily. It's just baked into what it is, and part of the roughness of it is also what makes it good. A really unique way. And there's almost like there are these moments where characters almost address to the audience, like the over the top nature of it, like the scene where Moore like breaks down. She has a line like, "This is so fucked up and over the top, I can hardly stand it." And I wasn't sure if that's like prodding the audience slightly. Like, yeah, this is an over the top scene. There is it's like acknowledging the melodrama to a certain degree. So almost it needs the melodrama to even work at all, with like how ambitious this is, how the kind of subject matter that is being dealt with. It's like, yeah, a lot of heavy stuff that's being played with, and it does require the like right finesse to get that level of humor, get that level of darkness, and not get lost in this big image you've created with this.
Yeah. It's a very interesting, very weird, very ambitious film that's trying to tackle a lot at once. And I'm glad we watched it again. I think that's pretty much everything I have to say about it. The editing was fucking incredible. Love the editing. There's a really nice flow to a lot of the scenes. The camera work, so many, like, just the camera will just fucking just go right up to a character, and it's
alive. Yeah, it's like a character in the movie.
Very dynamic, very expressive filmmaking. Very, very great movie that has some issues, but just I feel like what it manages to pull off, and the things that I do like about it, and the overall experience, like, sure, there are things that didn't work about it and could be cut from it. I was never bored.
That's
fucking flying by. And also, I watched it right after Rebel Moon Part 2. Maybe that's the ideal way to watch it. But I was like, so much more happened. Like, when we got to the hour mark, I was like, this is where people were still doing story time. but there was so much more just offered in this film.
It's kind of like, if there are these sort of three major groups of characters going on, it's a 3-hour movie. Yeah, it's almost like 3 really solid episodes, and there's one that's like a 10 out of 10 episode, and there's one that's like a 7 or 8 out of 10. The other one's also very good. It's just hard when you have so much going on. It's like the anthology movie problem. It's the Crash problem. It's just when you play with so many characters, it's just such an obvious pitfall where all it takes is for one character to not work, one story thread or section to not be entertaining at the same level, and it drags the whole overall project down in a way that is not a concern for Boogie Nights or There Will Be Blood or what I consider to be his better films. But I do love where this sits. I think it was the right film to make at that time. It was probably the correct thing to do, just to jump into this after kind of wild success of Boogie Nights. I think that was a good decision in retrospect. It's just not my favorite film of his.
Yeah. Overly ambitious, but the ambition is part of what makes it work. The parts that do work.
Exactly. Yeah. I'd give this a low 8 out of 10 or 4-star, or a high, 3.5. 7 out of 10 for me.
I'm giving it a hard 8.
Just right down the middle hard 8, yeah.
Fuck it.
That's fair. That's generous. Yeah. I'd say that's fair.
Yeah. That's what that was the rating that I had from like retrospect in my memory. As in, that's what was on IMDb, and I don't think I rated it right after I saw it when I was like 13, but I think like, I don't know, some years later I was like, what do I remember it being like? It's an 8.
Yeah.
So in that way it held up.
Yeah, I had this as an 8.
Some great stuff.
Hell yeah. Yeah, good pick.
Oh, thank you. All right, question time.
All right, let's do some questions then from the Sardonicast community. Head over to the suggestion thread over on the subreddit, just like OwnSpace2026 did, to leave questions for future episodes. This one's dumb, but I don't know, it keeps showing up in the thread, and it's one of those ones you just got to answer and just move on, okay? Favorite flavor of Pringles?
Let's do I'm a sour cream and onion kind of guy.
Yeah, they're pretty solid. I like paprika. It's pretty good.
I don't eat a lot of Pringles.
Yeah, they're not really my go-to. I find my sausage fingers and my like fat hand doesn't really get into the tube real good, you know? Like, it's not the best receptacle for me.
No, yeah, I have to like tilt them out.
Yeah, same. So I hope that answers your Pringles question, Own Space. Yeah, I hope you're pleased about that one. We can do a real one now from Johnny Stevie. What are your thoughts on the whole Gen Z doesn't like unnecessary sex scenes discourse. On the one hand, I can understand that to a lot of people, especially women, it's annoying to have the amount of unnecessary and exploitative nudity in movies for decades. French cinema in particular is full of scenes where women just go topless for basically no other reason than the director's perviness. But there's also a weirdly Puritan attitude towards sex scenes that I find kind of odd, and I think the availability of porn could be a part of that. So I feel like we brought this up a couple times before, but there have been some kind of there's been some progress made, at least in the streaming space, with Netflix embracing this kind of idea where I don't know if it's actually out yet, or I've seen the screenshots of this feature that's supposedly coming or has been implemented into Netflix, where it's like a toggle.
Oh, what?
Skip the foreplay literally.
What the fuck?
Make family movie night less awkward by deleting naughty scenes from this show.
Skip the foreplay and straight to the sex scene?
So the example was like Bridgerton, and there's like a toggle saying, no, it's fine, or please do.
What?
Skip the foreplay literally.
Like there's actually, like is this implemented?
I don't know if it's implemented or an idea that's coming, or
is it
fake
real?
news or what.
Okay.
But I get, the fact we're even questioning it, I guess, feeds back into the central point of like, it's more and more discussed.
Yeah, I read that like the amount of sex scenes in movies over the past year has decreased.
Yeah, that's another thing.
But I also did not look into it. I just kind of saw a headline and moved on with my day because it wasn't really that important to me. There are some responses to this, of people going like, good, we don't want any sex scenes in movies. It's like, okay, well, I I hope that one day you see a movie with a sex scene in it that's purposeful, because I think that's just kind of telling on yourself that, like what movies have you seen where every sex scene is a bad thing, or any sexiness whatsoever? Like, Megan Fox in Transformers feels a little unnecessary and just kind of dumb. It's literally just, hey, isn't she hot?
Yeah, it's just like Playboy.
Like that's the whole movie. Whereas something like Challengers, sure, there might be people in the audience that are like, oh, this is hot. But that's not really the point of it.
Hell yeah.
And it says so much about the characters, and it sets up their dynamics. And you can have a sexually charged film that still works, and there's a purpose to it, and it's handled right. A director like Luca Guadagnino has achieved that. Sexuality doesn't need to be in a film, and it doesn't need to be absent from a film. It depends on the film you're making. Yeah, don't ban them, but...
Yeah, you're right in what you say, but it's also true that if we're looking at film as a form of like artistic expression, how would you not include sexuality ever?
Yeah.
It just seems like an absurd concept when it's like it's part of the human condition. We're like sexual creatures. To never talk about that or allude to that in any art we make, especially with like the popularity of film and shows and whatnot, and visual medium, it just seems like crazy for that to, I don't know, to me, I find it difficult to even empathize with the opposite stance of like, yeah, it just hurts the pacing, they're never necessary. When it's like, well, there definitely are cases where that does happen, like early Game of Thrones, like some of those sex scenes are just like gratuitous and stupid and annoying. But there are also plenty where you learn.
It just shows that they're watching bad movies.
Yeah.
It shows the narrow lens with which they consume media.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I don't know where that comes from. If it is like just a puritanical thing for just a bit, and we're going to swing another way in 10 years, and I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how much of a like trend it really is. Like, we'll see. Like, I try not to take, things that people say on Twitter as like a real reflection of the real world. Because there's a lot of people, there's a lot of smart people that don't post on Twitter. Right? Twitter, most of the tweets come from the dumbest people. Most of what's on that platform is the dumbest voices. So
the dumbest voices, or they might not even be human voices as well.
Oh yeah,
people are literally getting riled up by like bots, by by plants. But yeah, it's completely absurd that it's able to really dictate anything like that, but I mean, it does. Like, if this feature is real and it's actually something that's being implemented, it's clearly something. I don't know. They must get so much like telemetry and data and like weird stuff from these streaming services, like on Netflix, HBO Max, or whatever. Maybe they see that this is actually a feature that people would use. Like, why would they build it otherwise? You know.
Mm-hmm.
It's very weird that it's even being brought up at all. But I don't know. I think some people just inherently have a completely different fundamental approach to like what movies are to them. They are more like perhaps like a roller coaster or something like that. And yeah, maybe that would be weird if like in a roller coaster it stopped for a second and became like a sex show that you weren't anticipating.
Mm-hmm.
But that would only make sense with you viewing the whole thing as a roller coaster experience, which I really don't. I think it's much more going on than just like key jangling and whatever.
Yeah, I mean, like I don't know. There's a lot. The younger generation, I don't know if it's necessarily a generational difference or just the fact that there's younger people saying their opinions on the internet. Like, we'll probably see the same trends. A lot of the dumbest takes on, something like furry Twitter, we see it like every day. Like a lot of the stupidest, like puritanical, anti-sex mentality, you'll see their profile. It's like, oh, this person's 18 through 20. And then like literally it's just a part of growing up. They're like, oh, okay, wait. Sexuality is a part of, the human experience. And it's weird. Like human beings are the ones placing this weird exception on sexuality out of some weird, bizarre insecurity that most people seem to have about sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, so that puritanical angle definitely does play a role.
I don't know. I think it might just be an age thing rather than a generational thing.
Yeah, for sure. Well, speaking of an age thing, the Idiot Store says, a bit of a random one, but are there any modern slang terms that you guys like/dislike?
Well, I'm a skibbity rizlet.
Fucking hell.
So, what?
Out of that pocket of phrases, I don't know, I quite like lock in. There's something humorous about locking in to me. But
what's that?
I don't know, it's just what people say now. Oh, he's locked in. Is
that a new thing that people say?
I think so. Yeah, I could be wrong.
Yeah.
I thought that was like in the same, group as, skibbity Rizzler bullshit. I'm not a fan of W and L there. That's my cutoff point is there. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like that's a moment when you're like, I'm too old to indulge in some of these, I'll lock in now and again, but I'm not W or L in over here. I'll even skibbity maybe once in a blue moon, but no W or L in for me, I'm afraid.
What was the question? Just slang that we like?
Any modern slang you like or dislike in particular?
I don't know. I just fucking adapt to the times. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
I'm evolving. It depends on what it is, and especially if I'm gonna be involved in internet culture, then you have to have some sort of understanding.
Yeah, well, I tried to fight it a few times. Where like when Leafy was at like his prime, and the word like cringe was like just every other word. It was everywhere. It's not quite the same as it was, but I remember being like, I'm going to make an effort to like not use the word cringe, but I gave up. I lost. Some fights you can't win. You just got to, maybe you do need to take the W or take the L, sorry. Turn that L into a W.
Yeah, embrace the cringe. That's what I do.
You have to be cringe to be based?
Yes. If you care whether or not people think you're cringe, then you're society cucked. You're going to get cucked by society.
And that would be an L, so you don't want to do that.
Yes.
I just turned 30 and I feel so old. Like 30 isn't even old. but like online it feels old.
It's funny.
It's hilarious. Just how quickly stuff moves with this kind of stuff.
Yeah. The best you can do is just try not to be a person that, turns into everything you hated about older people.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Every single fucking generation is just playing through the fucking same song and dance of like, the younger generation's unhinged and crazy and lazy. And it's like, fucking God, like, you don't remember this shit that they were saying about your generation? Like, are you seriously judging entire generations of people based on the worst takes on Twitter? Like, you're literally, you think you're so detached from reality that you think that your generation that you're a part of, like, oh yeah, all the best voices are what people saw of that. No, people look at the stupidest voices in every generation.
Exactly.
Time moves forward.
I remember when I used to use YouTube as my main source of listening to music, like in the mid 2000s or whatever. That was always the joke, right? In the comments was like, man, I was born in the wrong generation. That when this song was out is when music was real. And it's like, oh, you said that the longer you live, the more times you just see, oh, now people my age are saying that about like the early 2000s. That's when music was real, I guess. It's like, oh, I guess everyone just does this. Like every generation, it's like, yeah, ours was the real thing, and now it sucks.
You compare the entire year of art that you're in to just the memorable great things from previous decades.
The things you loved in your formative years too, especially.
Yeah, you're feeling nostalgia for the good things. But there was a lot of shit too,
which you loved because you were 13.
Yeah. Look at go to the Wikipedia page. There's Wikipedia lists showing all of the notable releases from a certain year. That's how I made my my April Fool's video, top 10 films of 1996. The first half of that is me just like, I went through the Wikipedia list, found some ones that looked funny, watched some trailers, found some funny trailers, and then was like, okay, I'm including this. Because there's a lot, nobody remembers the film Bogus, starring Whoopi Goldberg, Gerard Depardieu, and Haley Joel Osment. But that was a movie in 1996. It was a movie that was in a theater. Right?
Oh, there's so many of those. There's so many.
And you might see a movie in 1996 and be like, damn, they just don't make movies like the 70s anymore. Or like art and culture. Like people are now nostalgic for like the Spice Girls. When that shit came out, people were like, this is not music.
Yeah. This is the death of pop or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Whatever. Like it doesn't
Boy
really
bands
matter.
are ruining music. Yeah. Right. Let's do a couple more here then. Like this one from FobTech. Papa Meat recently posted a video ranking different fandoms against each other to determine which fandom smells the worst. His pick for the top smelliest fandom of all time was furries. My question for Adam, do you agree with this take? Do you have any horror stories involving stinky furries? And for Alex, have you had any run-ins with stinky fandoms?
What's the methodology?
Have you had any run-ins with stinky fandoms at movie theaters or elsewhere? Marvel fans, anime fans, etc. I'll let you go first.
What was the methodology? What did he just? That was like a meme video, right? I didn't watch it.
I assume so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't see it.
I think I will throw in that like there is, the people who don't understand or haven't been involved in communities like that would assume like, oh, furries are so smelly. Furries are so smelly. But a lot of those people that make those assumptions are just people that have experience with like anime and gaming fandoms.
Yeah, because that is the answer. Holy shit! Like gaming conventions, dude, it's not right. What is happening? Like some of the basic hygiene stuff you're getting there, like some of the smells. It's like there was this time I wanted to go to in London. They did this like big like Smash Bros tournament thing. I was like, oh, this sounds sick or whatever. Then I like talk to some people, hear some stories. I'm like, bro, some of the smells, some of the hygiene is vile.
Yeah.
So I just didn't wind up going to that one.
What furries have going for them in terms of hygiene is like fucking like 80% of the community is a bunch of queer people, and then the majority like it seems are like bottoms, right? So it's like there's a lot of people that are like hyper obsessive over hygiene in the furry community, right? Alex, as a non-furry yourself, who has now been to 2 different furry conventions, would you say there was any smell?
There was no single BO smell, and I would say because that bothers me when it I don't know, when you get it bad. And no, not once.
Yeah, I went to RTX 2 different years, and just on a whim, I was like, okay, I'm going to check out what they call the rave. I want to see what a rave is for this gaming YouTube centered convention. And it was like a wall of BO. I was like, whoa, what the fuck?
You could taste it in the air.
Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah. So I when I walked into that room, I was like, is this what people think furry conventions is? like I finally get it now that I've seen what the fuck this can, like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I don't know. Like, sure, there's very likely a couple furries here and there that don't understand good hygiene and don't understand deodorant or showering, right? That definitely exists in any community.
Yeah.
Especially, you know, online people. Some might not be as socially fluent, but in terms of, you know, communities that are online people, furries have to be like at the top of the list for most hygienic you could get. If you're comparing furries to like anime, gaming, Star Wars, like any fucking nerd culture
gaming, Comic-Cons,
that exists, furries are the least stinky by far.
Yeah. Well, I remember it being such a problem when I was like really obsessed in like the 2010s. I was big into like IGN at the time and some of the podcasts and stuff they did, and they would talk about going to E3 or whatever, or Gamescom, and they said like, you have to bring hand sanitizer. You like even like nose plugs. Like it's so bad. Like some of the hygiene. It's like and I completely believe it, and it's like. It's part of why I love all this nerd shit, but I'm just not. I don't want to go to Comic-Con. I don't want to. I don't want that in my life. I don't need that. I'm good.
Yeah, furries, not stinky. Sorry, you fucked up. You fucked up, Meat Canyon. You done fucked up now. Fiendish Dr. Wu.
Oh shit. Well,
drama.
Yeah, hell yeah, get some drama going. Should we do one more here? It's quite a good one to end on.
Let's do it.
Spider with a hat, as this to say. Do you guys feel like you have an especially good memory? I hear you talking about movies watched years ago and you remember so many details. I find that amazing considering I can't remember most of my favorite movies. I don't have a good memory. Not at all. Like, that's why I've got to make notes. I've got to reference notes. That's why I've got to rewatch Rebel Moon Part 1 so I can remember, like, what happened. It's weird. I've got the visual memory, I've got a very good one. I remember shots in movies. I remember visual elements. It's more like the names of things and names of actors. Like, the words I don't remember. What about you?
When an experience connects with me, I have a fucking incredible memory. But that's I've never been diagnosed, but I feel like I might have autism because I'm like every fucking day that passes, I'm like, wow, I do really kind of like hyper focus and have like obsessions on things, and then other things just literally fucking bounce off me. Like I posted that video of the Boss Baby thing.
Yeah.
Or I was not understanding like basic elements of the plot and just things that happened like 5 minutes ago. I was like, what? Because it just bounces off me. But the real experiences that I do get something out of, whether it's even like a positive or negative emotion, I remember those things super fucking well. I can remember like the key of a song that I haven't heard in like 20 years if it's something that I love.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Could be ADHD, autism. The Venn diagram's pretty crosses over.
Yeah.
Big for that one. Could be both.
There's definitely something there. I have a really good memory when it comes to like experiences, not just like in movies, but like conversations with people, or like meaningful interactions that I have with people, or like trauma. I have a really good memory for trauma.
Yeah.
Any traumatic.
Yeah, anything traumatic, or if there's like any room for imagination too. If you've got like a good when you have a good visual imagination and something's bothering you, that could be a curse in and of itself.
Yeah. So in some ways I have the best memory, and in some ways I have the worst. It depends on what the experience is. I am at both opposite ends of that spectrum simultaneously.
Yeah, I also find music and sounds capture memory to me quite unlike anything. So I could listen to a song I was rinsing in 2014, and it would just bring me to like that moment where I was listening to that song a lot, like the exact emotions I was feeling, what I was going through at that time. It's one of the things I love about music, actually. So it has this unique ability for me to bind itself to moments in time that other kind of artistic mediums don't do for me in the same way.
Mm-hmm. All right. That's it.
And we did it.
We did it, fam.
We did it, fam. And
that was that was a real W of an episode.
Yeah, you're right. The no L's to be seen around here. Oh god, I feel so fucking old.
Well, get used to it.
Yeah, double down, I say.
Yeah, lean into it. Get a cane.
Oh man,
start yelling at kids.
I can't even go down the Kate route. Yeah, old man yells at cloud. I feel like I've already been there a bunch of times, but you just got to get angrier and yell at more clouds, I guess. I'll figure it out. But yeah, I figured out what to recommend you. Right, you're not gonna be happy about this. I'm sorry.
Oh, thanks.
I'm sorry, but I have to do it. Sometimes things line up in a way where it's like,
oh, is this timed?
God damn it, Adam. This is timed.
God damn it, me.
I wasn't planning to do this. Yes. You mentioned it earlier, okay?
Oh, fuck.
And you presented an opportunity for me now where it's going to hurt, okay?
So you're saying it's my fault. Before you even hurt me,
it's going to hurt you. Yes. Wait, what you were alluding to earlier, right? You're talking about what BVS did to you, okay?
Oh,
what it did
fuck!
To you, what it made you blame, right? It made you blame a certain franchise, okay?
We've already done them.
Nah, there's one missing. There is a 2016 film by Gareth Edwards.
Oh no!
Rogue One. I'm recommending Rogue One.
I was gonna not watch it. I literally removed it from my I thought I was gonna not watch it.
Yes.
I literally removed it from my watch list.
It's 2016, so you've at least got that excuse. Also, I selfishly am curious to revisit almost 10 years later. Andor's really good. I love that character. Also, like, just the timing of this, you got to give me that one. I'm so sorry, but it's too juicy. It's too juicy. Come on, you can't.
No, I understand. It's fine.
It had to be done. I'm sorry, man, but yeah. Oh dear.
If you don't want to be spoiled. For Rogue One.
I'm not finishing the Spy era. I'm still here reveling in
Star Wars story. Directed by Gareth Edwards. Watch it before the next episode. These episodes come out every 2 weeks. You can listen to them early by going to Sardonicast.com. Sign up for premium. It's only $2 a month. Patreon.com/Sardonicast will get you the same thing. We also now have our episodes available for members on YouTube. Although, I should mention that if you do it on YouTube, for some reason you can't They have to update this at some point. I don't know why YouTube does this. So
The members.
the memberships, they exist now. So if you find it convenient to do it through YouTube instead of Patreon or the website, just so you're on the same platform, feel free to do that. But I will warn you, as of right now, and we'll let you know as soon as this isn't the case, for some reason, members videos, you can't, like, even if you have premium, you can't, like, turn your phone screen off and still have it play.
That's right. That is a weird, stupid... They must patch that
and
at
I
some point.
think you might also not be able to, like, download them. They have to change that at some point.
They must do, because that doesn't even seem intentional.
But anyway, it's set up now. And if, let's say, you're the type of person where, you know, maybe you listen to the episodes on your computer and you just have a tab open and play it while you're working or whatever, and that's how you listen to it, then maybe that's the best option for you. But yeah, didn't think about that. We set it up, and then people in the subreddit were like, oh, just FYI, this is a dumb thing. I was like, fuck.
I'm sure in time they'll get around to it.
But whatever. You have that information. Do with it what you will. And we got a Sardonicast highlights channel on YouTube. Go subscribe to it. Hit the bell on the regular Sardonicast channel.
I'm so sorry. Sometimes, man.
It's over 2 hours. I'm going to be so pissed.
Oh, it flies by there.
I'm going to be so pissed watching this.
Oh, man.
Whatever.
I'm gonna enjoy
Whatever. I'll be a good sport about it.
Let's go.
Yeah, fuck it. All right. Thanks for listening to everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
May the fourth be with you.
Fuck off. It's the May the 6th right now. Fucking goddamn it. All right. Bye.